Big boobs. What? Child. Anyway, so
what is the purpose of introducing Oh Father this late in the show? He's on the poster for the final season with all the other soups, despite us knowing literally nothing about him. And 3 episodes into the final season, we still barely know anything, but we may have gotten some clues to what his role will be. So here's the theory. Oh Father is manipulating Homelander, and the Stillwell visions that he's having aren't just, him losing his mind, but it's part of Oh Father's powers. Now, I know that sounds like a really big assumption to make, but by the end of this video, I'm going to show you how there's actually a decent amount of evidence to support it. And if you've already liked the video and subscribed, let's get into it by first talking about who Oh Father is. Because the show hasn't explained pretty much anything yet, but that's probably intentional. But what we know so far is that Oh Father has been introduced this season as a Christian soup. He is a religious leader, and he is this preacher with speaking powers. In the comics, his ability is pretty straightforward, just flight and super strength. But in the show, they've already shown that his power is probably sound-based. Now, I've seen some people speculate that his power works like Black Canary or Black Bolt, like basically a super-powered sonic scream. And while it may be presented that way based on like the special effects in the show, it doesn't actually do any damage when he was yelling. If his power was actually similar to him, if he was yelling that loud at the top of his lungs, it should be blowing things apart like Banshee from the X-Men. But for Oh Father, he's yelling and it doesn't really do anything, it's just really loud. Now, I don't think his power is going to be just something lame like his voice is really loud. I think his power has something to do with emotional manipulation, maybe similar to Kate's power from Gen V, but instead of being able to touch them and control their mind, it's probably a weaker version, but he can do it through sound. Just based on the only time that we've seen him use his power, we see the Deep and even Homelander kind of not really caring about the ceremony for A-Train, but when he uses his power and he starts yelling, everybody starts, getting up and clapping. And this is the first time that we see Homelander have his Stillwell hallucination and him hear her voice in his mind. So that's what I think Oh Father's real power is in this show. It's something to do with triggering feelings of bliss, maybe agreement, maybe some form of feelings of recognizing divine intervention. And this would make sense for Oh Father's character, because of course he is supposed to be kind of like this cult leader soup. They're portraying him as this manipulative religious figure. So giving him this power to make everybody follow his command, follow his words, really makes sense for a soup that's parodying these power-hungry religious figures. So now let's break this down piece by piece of the evidence that we have that Oh Father's powers were actually working on Homelander. First, we have the timing of this character in the show. Because Homelander hallucinating isn't like a new thing. We've seen him talk to like hallucinations of himself in the cracked mirror. It's not new for Homelander to have these insane mental breakdowns. But it's very, very specific that Stillwell appeared as an angel and started talking to him about how Jesus was the most loved man. And this only happens right after Oh Father was introduced, which I find just too perfect to be coincidental. We've never really seen Homelander talk about like the Christian religion that much outside of just talking about God, but all of a sudden after Oh Father, and he has that moment where he hears Stillwell in his mind while Oh Father is yelling, now we get these hallucinations of Stillwell as an angel. And second, Stillwell being the hallucination is very specific. Homelander hasn't really talked or thought about Stillwell in a while. It's been like 3 seasons. But obviously Stillwell means something very specific to Homelander, because while he's had people in his life that he felt like he cared about, such as Soldier Boy, such as Ryan, those people have turned on him. Whereas Stillwell is kind of one of the only people in his life that he felt like truly cared and loved him. Now this might be another hint to how Oh Father's powers work on people. Maybe the people that attend his sermons normally experience their own version of this religious ecstasy, and they see, Jesus in their hallucinations or visions. But for Homelander, to him, Stillwell was his angel figure in his mind. Maybe Oh Father's powers brings to you a vision or a feeling of what you want to see / hear. And thirdly, Homelander has had a huge behavioral change. In the beginning of the show, he is constantly spiraling. He keeps on feeling this intense pain of people betraying him or leaving him. There's countless different examples. A-Train, Ryan, Soldier Boy. There's many, many more. He basically feels like everyone who he's ever cared about is turning against him. But after that divine intervention with Stillwell, all of a sudden he's calm now. And of course, this has to do with him believing that he is destined to be this immortal, godly being. But again, I feel like it lines up perfectly with Father's arrival. He gets his first hallucination of Stillwell during Father's, preaching or yelling. And then after his second hallucination, the full hallucination of Stillwell, he gets this full calmness. When he's fighting and talking with Ryan, he is just so calm. He doesn't have this intense pain that he would have felt in previous seasons or even before this hallucination. Even after the fight with Ryan, he just looks like he's looking up and he's in total bliss, like he's completely high on himself. Now, I have even more evidence to support this theory using a connection we can make with the comics. If you don't know, in the comics, Black Noir is actually a clone of Homelander, and this isn't really a spoiler because we know that the show isn't gonna go down this route at all. But in the comics, Black Noir is basically drives Homelander insane by doing all these crazy things, and there's pictures taken of him doing it, and because he looks like Homelander sees all these pictures of him doing all these horrible things that he doesn't remember doing, and it drives him insane. Now, I think the show is trying to replicate this Homelander going insane plotline with all these hallucinations, but doing it in a different way. He's kind of using his psychic manipulation to turn Homelander even crazier than before. And this actually makes perfect sense because now Homelander mirrors Butcher in a way, and we know that the show loves to show these two characters as two sides of the same coin. Butcher has the tumor inside of him, and that tumor makes him hallucinate Kessler, which is basically his evil side. And on the other hand, we have Homelander who hallucinates Stillwell, and she appears as an angel. Homelander sees himself as a god, so of course he has an angel in his mind, and Butcher sees himself as the devil, which is why he has Kessler, like a demon in his mind. On one hand, we have Butcher, who literally tells Ryan that the world is better off without people like them too, and that's why Butcher is so willing to die alongside all the other soups, whereas Homelander wants to live forever because he believes himself as a pure divine god that only does good. And I think by introducing this Father theory, they're able to present this parallel mirror between Butcher and Homelander even more. Now the question is why? Why would Father want to be emotionally manipulating Homelander in a way? Because originally when I saw Father on the poster of The Boys, I thought he was going to be a new member of the Seven. But now that Soldier Boy took that spot, I really had to think about why Father is even in this show at all. I just feel like if he was going to be a super minor character in the show and not really contribute at all, there would be no point in putting him in the marketing at all. So that's why I think he'll be involved in a separate, bigger plot. I think he could be working with Ashley potentially, because Ashley, as we know, they're this new couple now under Vought. And if he could influence emotions and she can read minds somehow, and she also has this internal mind dialogue, there could be something building there where Ashley's planning something and using Father. Or it could even be Sister Sage. She could be playing the long game and using Father to manipulate Homelander into doing what she wants. Maybe using Father's power to keep Homelander docile and happy could be part of her strategy. We don't know yet. Of course, there's another possibility, which is that Father accidentally triggered something in Homelander and it wasn't planned for him to be using his powers on Homelander in that way. But once Homelander realizes what Father can do, he might want him to project those feelings of worship and adoration into the crowds to make people look at Homelander and see him as a god. Either way, Father's purpose in the story is, I think, much bigger than any of us would have expected. Whether he is a big mastermind in this plan, or he's just a puppet of someone else, or he could even be a tool that Homelander is going to exploit, I feel like he will be very important to how the final season will end. So that's the theory of Father. Let me know what you guys think about Father and his potential role in the final season of The Boys in the comments below.